Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video report of Agora Strategy. So we're trying out this new format to more strongly engage with our experts and with you. So please feel free to share your comments, your feedback, and anything else you would like to share with us, be it via direct message or in the comment section. And today we're going to talk about economic transition, green transition, and energy security in the MENA region. So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to the topic. Then I hand over to my colleague Lena, and Lena will walk you through some facts and figures and also will guide you through the interview with our colleague Nasser bin Nasser, who has been working with Agora for about 5 years now. Nasser is also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum in Davos and advising the United Nations Disarmament Research Institute as a senior advisor, as he's also specialized in energy and most particular security matters in the Middle East region. So let me give you a short few remarks on Agora Strategy. I know that most of you are already familiar with us, but Agora Strategy is a firm for geopolitical risk analytics, political advisory with an in-house internal think tank, the Agora Strategy Institute, which runs most of our analysis section. And this is also where most of our about 300 experts worldwide are affiliated with. So we wanted to seize the opportunity to engage with you and with the experts in this video format today. So why are we going to talk about the MENA region if there are so many other also urgent matters, of course, at global scale at the moment? After the Russian attack on Ukraine just a few months ago, we saw a disruptive change in international foreign politics, most particularly affecting the European Union, of course also Germany. And this turning point in international relations leads to a much stronger interest-driven approach also of the EU. We see, for example, also Nordic states like Finland and Sweden joining NATO or intending to join NATO, and the international sphere is changing quickly. We also saw after the Russian attack the high vulnerability of Western countries for natural resources, gas supply, but also the high dependence on a highly globalized world. Although these geopolitical changes in foreign politics are primarily driven by governments and public actors, all the consequences directly affect companies, be it directly via sanctions, supply chain disruptions, or also because there are plants in these countries and there are daughter companies affected directly, expats affected directly. In the bigger picture, all these changes lead to a different field for companies in their internationalization strategy. And this is where we want to shed some light on. And we don't want to talk only about the risk. I've mentioned a few sanctions, supply chains, but also direct risk for internationalization strategies, but also look at the opportunities which come always with disruptive change, be it in hydrogen, in energy transformation, or be it also in the field of, for example, private equity and investing in currently undervalued markets. Apart from that, we also see in the region an openness and a strong willingness for economic and technological transition. And this is also, again, always a huge opportunity for firms to engage. We just recently saw also Siemens now closing a huge historic deal with Egypt for transportation system, which of course will also affect many supplier companies, not only in the region, but also, for example, in Germany or the EU. So the cooperation potential is strong. On the other hand, we also know that the MENA region is of course not the most stable region in the world. So the EU has to catch up and to formulate their strategic interest and also engage at eye level, not only on the political side, but on the economic side with the region as well. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lena now. She'll walk you through a more detailed view on facts and figures, and with our experts, and we see us again at the end for a short wrap-up and some hands-on action recommendations from our side.
Thank you, Timo. To limit global warming, the EU aims to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. The EU intends to achieve this goal through the European Green Deal, a set of policy initiatives approved in 2020 to foster the clean energy transition. In the wake of Russia's war on Ukraine, the world's major energy importers are now seeking to gain independence from Russian energy supplies, which has triggered a worldwide energy crisis. Sky-high energy prices have added a further strain to a post-pandemic struggling global economy. The political urgency to reduce Europe's dependency on Russian energy supplies has the potential to disrupt plans for the transition to green and renewable energy. As energy security is now a key priority, political decisions that seem necessary now may have serious long-term consequences and set us back in the fight to contain climate change. The Middle East and North Africa region, in short, MENA, is becoming increasingly important for Europe, seeking to diversify its energy supplies. Oil and gas continue to play a significant role. The Middle East accounts for roughly 52% of proven oil reserves and 45% of proven gas reserves. Moreover, the MENA region has immense potential for renewable energy, namely solar and wind. From a technical perspective, the region has the potential to produce solar power equivalent to 50 to 60% of the total global electricity demand. In recent years, the region has begun to recognize the socio-economic benefits of renewable energy, ranging from industrial diversification to new value chain activities and technology transfers. From a geopolitical perspective, the MENA region has increasingly become an area in which global powers engage in competition for influence, particularly economic influence. This becomes evident when looking at trade data. We can see that China has continuously expanded its economic footprint in the MENA region since the mid-2000s, overtaking the US as the main trading partner following the 2007 to 2009 Great Recession. When comparing the bilateral trade totals of China and the US with the different MENA countries, we can see that China has become the largest trading partner for most of the MENA countries, with the exception of Bahrain and Jordan. So in light of the great power rivalry in the Middle East, as well as the region's energy potential, what role can the region play in the new energy crisis reality in the short term? And how can Europe increase its cooperation with the MENA region to advance the green energy transition in the long term? Which geopolitical risks and opportunities exist? To discuss the growing geopolitical importance of the MENA region for Europe's energy transition and to shed light on some of these questions, I'm pleased to speak today to one of Agora's fellows, Nasser bin Nasser. Welcome. Nasser, maybe to start us off, how do you assess the strategic importance of the Middle East today, and what is your current outlook on the region?
I would say that since the onset of the conflict in the Ukraine, the strategic value of the Middle East has been re-emphasized after years of perceived declining importance and perceived neglect even by the West. Western countries had been increasingly speaking about the importance of energy independence from the Middle East for years, had abruptly ended the counterterrorism mission, and became increasingly focused on China. Combined, these developments have sort of alienated the Middle East. But the conflict in Ukraine has effectively re-emphasized the Middle East's strategic value as a key player in international affairs, but also especially because of its role as an energy producer and/or an energy conduit to Europe. In terms of the second part of the question, what's the current outlook for the region? If we look at the region as a whole, it looks fine. The IMF's projected growth rate for the region in 2022 of 4.6% is 0.3% higher today than it was in January. But this big picture view is somewhat misleading because it overlooks an important distinction between oil producing and oil importing countries of the region. For the latter, oil importing countries, the combination of rising energy and food prices could cause unrest, and the concern is that it could recreate Arab Spring dynamics which would in turn impact the region's security and stability at large.
You mentioned the increased risk of social unrest. How would you rate the current political stability in the MENA region, granted that it may differ between the Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC countries, and the oil-importing countries?
Well, we don't want to be too sensationalist, but the risk is there because in many cases, it's not just a supply problem as it is globally, but it can also be a fiscal problem and even a capacity problem.
Where do you see the EU as a key partner in the region compared to other powers? Is the EU running behind in your view?
My response would again depend on what part of the region you're referring to. Countries of the Middle East in the broader Mediterranean basin already have organic relations with the EU through the EU neighborhood policy, through the Union for the Mediterranean and other such instruments. The EU has long recognized that two of its primary national security concerns, namely terrorism and migration, emanate from its broader Mediterranean neighborhood. So it's long invested in stability and the security and prosperity of that part of the region. This stands somewhat in contrast to countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, in the Middle East, where relations are strong, but still at a less developed stage, I would say. However, considering that climate and energy security are increasingly becoming key European national security concerns, then it's inevitable that the oil-producing GCC will figure more prominently in EU foreign policy making. And I already see the growing number of EU embassies in the region as a sign of this. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the EU is running behind.
Thank you. And how would you say does the EU's position or influence in the MENA region compare to that of countries like Russia and China, which have in recent years significantly increased their trade relations with the region?
Unfortunately, the region is historically and traditionally a sphere or an area where global powers compete. Sometimes global powers view the region within their prism of competition with other powers. I think the region wants to maintain relations, stable relations with all superpowers, but there are different competing interests in our region. That's a given. Well, I would say the interests and the influence are quite different. Russia and China perhaps lack the soft power that Europe has in the region, but they have stronger economic ties, especially in the case of China. There's greater dependency on the region to provide China with its energy requirements. China is the #1 customer of energy from the region.
In the wake of Russia's war on Ukraine, countries like Germany are forced to rethink their energy policy. If you were to put yourself in the shoes of the German Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, trying to secure energy supply from the region, where would you start and what would you do?
Well, I think I would say he's already on the right track, if I may say so, because he's been engaging the region in dialogue, and that's what's needed. Good example of that is that Germany and Jordan are scheduled to co-host the MENA Europe Future Energy Dialogue on June 8th in Jordan, and he's expected to attend the conference in person. The meeting's being held in coordination with the European Commission, the Union for the Mediterranean, the Arab League, the UN, and other global and German stakeholders, including representatives of energy and business communities. This type of dialogue is critical in furthering the partnership between the two regions. If I was to say sort of to add my 2 cents on in terms of my modest recommendations of what they could consider, it would be the two following points. One is that there's a need to adopt a holistic approach looking at energy supplies from the region. But it's not just about securing supply, but it's also one that stabilizes the region. policies that stabilize the region, both the energy-rich and the energy-poor hinterland. So Europe cannot really achieve security of supply while the region, politically speaking, is in such a dire situation. Two, I would also say that we cannot decouple water and energy in this discussion. And instead, we need to look at the nexus between them, given that the region is the water poorest region in the world.
You mentioned that what is needed is a holistic approach on the part of the EU, not just to secure energy supplies from the region, but also to stabilize the region. One way to stabilize the region would be to promote a green energy transition, as such a transition would bring about a wide range of socio-economic benefits. So how would you assess the current willingness to promote an energy transition, both among policymakers and the business community, in the GCC and the oil-importing countries? And how could the EU contribute to such an energy transition?
I think to begin with, a timely and successful green energy transition is critical for the region, as the region's already considered in a critical hotspot for climate-related risks, but also because the international community, including the United States and the EU, have adopted climate security as a key agenda in their foreign policy, and the region will likely follow suit with the international community. As you may know already, the countries of the GCC have set very ambitious targets at COP26, but at the same time, they've been accused, perhaps unfairly, that their commitments lack critical details on the scope, target architecture, transparency. And what I would say in response is that and they've also been criticized for not committing to any reduction in oil production as well. What I would say in response to both those issues is that on the one hand, the GCC can't commit to any reduction in oil production if global demand continues to thrive in the way it is. I would also say that regional targets can at times be a reflection of what's desirable rather than what's achievable. But I'm confident that the will is there and the details will become apparent over time. GCC countries have already changed their perception of climate change, climate security over the previous period. It's very noticeable, from one that solely views it as a threat to future oil revenue to one that sees it as a critical adaptation challenge. Having said that, climate change is yet to become the defining issue on the regional agenda as it is in Europe.
What are some of the concerns that the EU may still have or may still want to address to ensure effective engagement with the MENA countries?
I think security of supply is clearly linked to the stability of countries and routes, both maritime and overland. And if we look at flashpoints or choke points or risk points along these existing routes, we can see that there are plenty that should be of concern for the EU's energy security of supply. From the Straits of Hormuz to Bab el-Mandeb and the Eastern Mediterranean, these are all areas that require political solutions to stabilize. There's also, on the other hand, the strong possibility that alternate routes will come online, such as the Saudi plan to send its energy to international markets overland through Omani ports, which would bypass the Straits of Hormuz, or the extension of the Arab gas pipeline to Europe via Jordan, Syria, and Turkey, which would be a faster way to bring Egyptian gas to European market. I would say that's the primary concern for the EU. Another possible concern is that the MENA region may seek to double down on their investment in nuclear energy as a quick and perhaps more realistic means to decarbonize or reach their decarbonization targets. And this is an issue that does not sit well with some in Europe.
You mentioned that the security of energy supply is clearly linked to the stability of countries and routes. In the midterm, Europe and the Middle East must invest in developing a common infrastructure to facilitate the trade of gas, oil, but also solar, wind, and hydrogen power. However, as the US recently withdrew support from the East Med pipeline, what other infrastructure plans do the EU and the Middle East have to facilitate trade in energy?
I think in general, it's not so much support the infrastructure development in and by itself per se, but maybe helping the region translate these very ambitious targets into reality. And this can be done through joint investments in technology transfer, especially in the economic transformation away from hydrocarbons to cleaner energies. I think that the main role that Europe can play in the region's green energy transition is to maybe help the region translate these very ambitious targets into reality. And this can be done through joint investment in infrastructure, as you mentioned, but also technology transfer, especially in the economic transformation away from hydrocarbons to cleaner energies. Here, green, blue hydrocarbon production, as well as carbon capture technologies and opportunities are very high up on the lists of opportunities for direct investment. But so too are a variety of sectors that have been traditionally hard to decarbonize, such as heavy industry, transportation, especially long-haul freight, shipping, and aviation. I would also say outside of the investment side is potential areas for cooperation in establishing and enhancing the regulatory frameworks for projects in the region that would be required to meet this energy transformation.
So far, we've spoken primarily about political actors. In your view, what are the opportunities for international firms resulting from the green energy transition in the MENA region?
I think the only risk is that they don't act, to be honest. This is a problem that necessitates a whole of government and whole of society solution. So public-private partnerships need to be leveraged, and the private sector are going to increasingly play an important role in this energy transition. They need to be involved and on board and fully committed in order for it to become a reality.
So what are the key takeaways of our first video report? First of all, we have seen that energy and climate security are indeed very connected and pressing matters which come on the top of the agenda. One action recommendation for companies is to really engage with the EU, see which funds are available. If this could apply, for example, for investment in hydrogen infrastructure in the region and help developing new markets, developing also new cooperations with actors directly in the region. Of course, if you go in a region which is politically unstable, it makes sense to build risk capital buffers within the budget. So I know that most companies, of course, are doing this, but on top of everything invested in the region, it might be helpful to, depending on the exact target, have a capital buffer of up to 10-20% to offset potential risks which come along with it. Also, there's a good opportunity in the moment to build public-private partnerships for co-creation in the region, not only infrastructure, but also everything related to decarbonizing and everything related, for example, to different programs from semiconductors to artificial intelligence to enable these countries to go their own way. Also, we have seen that nearshoring in Northern Africa, for example, can be successful, and that indeed German companies are stronger investing in the region. There have been huge investments, for example, in ports and infrastructure. So there's a way forward, and it's good to be on the boat driving forward, but of course, always with a clear compass and navigation system. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you had some fun and learned some interesting details about the region. Please feel free to give us your feedback, your thoughts, your comments. And if we have a good discussion and if we see this as really a good format. We will continue with this as a video report series and address different challenges and opportunities at global scale with experts from our network. So thank you very much and looking forward to hearing back from you.